As a traffic lawyer, I want to explain what the rules and regulations are around if you have autism spectrum disorder and you want to hold a valid road license. The area itself is actually quite complicated, as is most licensing regulation, but as a starting point, in 2022, there was some recommendations made to government that suggested that certain types of neurological disorders, such as autism spectrum disorder, should be assessed to ensure that people who are driving are able to do so. Now, on paper, this is actually a sensible recommendation. You don't want people driving vehicles if there's some sort of situation whereby they would put themselves or others in danger. But the difficulty lies in how this law is implemented. Because remember, for many people, they may have had their license for a decade or so, and they're only diagnosed with autism in later life. Those people who've held those licenses for substantial periods of time haven't done anything wrong. They have continued to abide by the road rules, and they're simply getting their diagnosis late. Now, what that means is that for a subsection of society, there are people who've been driving with no difficulties whatsoever who now have to make a determination about whether or not they want to get assessed to determine whether they have autism or one of those conditions on that list, because if they do so, they may have to declare it, they may have to take extra steps, and that may cause them a degree of difficulty, discomfort, or cost. And that seems, on the face of it, incredibly unfair. So how does it work in practice? Well, in all states and territories, if you have a condition which affects your driving, you have to disclose it. Disclosure usually requires you to fill out a form, nominating a GP, and potentially requiring you to go and do additional assessments. The most rigorous regulations are in Queensland, where there's an enormous fine because of something called Jet's Law. Jet's Law originates from a tragic case where a young man by the name of Jet was killed in a car accident because a driver had an epileptic fit. And after that, the law was passed that said if there's any condition that may affect your driving, you need to notify the authorities. This is at any time. This does not mean simply when you are reapplying for your license. Similarly, in Western Australia, you have a positive obligation to inform the authorities if you have autism. In Victoria, drivers have an obligation to self-report anything that might affect their driving. Now, in New South Wales and South Australia, you don't have a positive obligation to report autism, but if you have a condition which affects your driving, you have to report it. The regulations vary state by state. If you're unsure, you should get some advice. But the problem lies in the fact that for many people, they're worried that if they diagnose and get the proper diagnosis, then they're going to lose their ability to drive. And Australia is not a country which you can sensibly move around in if you don't have a vehicle for many people. And so you've got a lot of people on the margins of society going, well, do I want to risk losing my license? It's a horrible situation to find yourself in. But unfortunately, it's legal. And so the advice is, if you have any questions, get some advice specific to you. Follow me for more legal TikTok.